It is the political season, and we got a candidate with us in studio this morning, the Republican candidate for Oregon State Attorney General, Michael Cross, with us. And Michael, good to have you here at KBZY Radio.
Well, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to have you here. I was just, before we were going on there, I was just asking you, of course, this is a completely unusual type of season in terms of elections this year. None quite like this. And just in terms of how you've been able to adjust to the campaign, how have you been able to adjust? How have you been able to conduct things so far?
Well, it's quite an unusual times, obviously. And so we're having to do a lot more stuff online and things like that, and it is a challenge, and in some ways it's more expensive. It's harder to campaign for sure, and it's obviously everybody's just doing the best that they can, businesses, individuals, and so running for political office is no different.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you won the primary, so you've had a couple of months now to kind of get into the swing. How is your campaign going so far?
It's going great. It's going great. Our website is michaelcrossfororegon.com, and we are looking for more volunteers and donations and stuff like that. Greatly appreciated at michaelcrossfororegon.com. And I wanted to touch on the statute's quite clear for any type of disaster, that type of a thing. And the governor's limited statutorily to 28 days maximum. And, of course, in our government of checks and balances, the way our founding fathers had set it up, thank goodness, the Attorney General's role is to rein in the governor when needed. And it's my position that she's beyond her statutory authority. If there are situations, that require more than 28 days, certainly she can ask for permission through the legislature for authorization to stay closed more than 28 days, but she never even bothered to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if I was in there as Attorney General, I would be reining her in. I mean, you have to look at the collateral damage with what's going on. And I believe that the COVID-19 is no worse than the flu or the cold. I know of a business here in Oregon where back in October, somebody actually had traveled back from Wuhan, China, of all things. And shortly after that, everybody in the office got sick, but they all recovered just fine. So this is nothing to be afraid of, and the depression and actually wearing a mask and things like that can weaken your immune system, make you a little weaker, and it starves your body of oxygen to a degree.
So you don't support wearing masks?
Well, I do. I don't think it should be mandatory. If somebody feels safer, more comfortable wearing a mask, then absolutely, by all means, do so. On the other hand, if you're sneezing and coughing and things like this, then no mask is going to help you or anybody around you. You just need to stay home.
Mm-hmm.
Just common sense prevails here. But I don't think we should be forced to do it. And certainly the economic impact to the entertainment, the lodging and dining industry is just devastating, and it's going to be very hard for us to recover economic, and that concerns me. I've worked for myself most of my life, so I get it, and I understand these things, and that's why it's most disconcerting.
Well, you mentioned that they're working as in the private sector. Why don't you maybe just take a moment or two to give us a little bit about your background? How did your life lead up to this run for Attorney General?
Well, I'm alarmed by what's going on in this state, and it's not the Oregon that I've loved my entire life, and that's why I decided that I had to step up and do something. Right out of high school, I was in the military, and I served honorably, and I swore an oath, of course, to uphold and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I've never disavowed that oath, and so I don't like what's going on in Oregon, and I don't understand. The statutes are quite clear. ORS 166.015 talks about rioting, and that's what's going on up in Portland. It's not a demonstration. It's not a protest. There's a difference, and I will absolutely defend everybody's First Amendment rights to exercise, their freedom of speech and stuff like that. If they're not happy with something, certainly they have a right to do that. But I got to tell you, destroying the elk statue that's been there since Oregon wasn't even 50 years old, so that statue is over 120 years old, that's inexcusable. And The only demonstration that they're proving is that they can destroy our city, and that's not right. And I have photographs of Ted Wheeler participating in the riot, and that's a Class C felony, and that's very serious. And I think they should be prosecuted for that. It's not a demonstration. Any message that they had initially about anything at the beginning has been lost. And there was a black man stabbed up there. So I thought Black Lives mattered, but all lives matter, frankly. And, this is not good. It's not good for us as a country. It's not good for anybody.
Well, another issue you wanted to address that's important to you is human trafficking. Now, how does that tie into your campaign? How does that topic arise in your standing?
Well, unfortunately, Oregon is number one for certain things, and we're down at the bottom of the list for certain things. We're at the bottom of the list for we're like number 47 for schools graduation rate nationally. That's very disconcerting. That's not really something that I can affect too much, I guess, from the standpoint of maybe crime prevention and ensuring that the kids are in school and that kind of thing. But we are number one in human trafficking and child disappearances out of the nation. And what I would want to do would be to give local and statewide law enforcement the tools necessary. Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's find out exactly what's going on, and let's make a difference. I mean, but I think you got to take a step back, and the precursors to that are a divided family. What makes these children vulnerable in the first place is mom and or dad are not looking after them properly. Maybe they're not being supervised. Maybe they come from a divided family. And so I think that in cases of domestic violence where there's no injury, we need to try and maintain, that family, keep that family intact, give them the tools and resources they need to, properly manage their differences, conflict resolution, things like this. Many times, arguments are started by, financial woes, and in this climate, and this, it's even worse. And so domestic violence cases are very important. And, we need to make sure that our kids have a good, solid foundation when they're growing up. So what we need to do is, again, give them the tools, give the families the tools, because if the conflict started between, about a financial woes, and then the cops arrive for whatever reasons, the lamp's knocked on the floor, there's no injuries, to protect that department civilly, and I would want to look at this and address this. Somebody needs to go to jail. They need to separate those people, and in many cases, there's a no-contact order. So now they have to maintain two separate households, and this just makes the situation even worse. And you know what? The kids deserve better, because why penalize the children when the adults have made a mistake? See, that's what I believe we need to address, and we need to make some changes in there.
Mm-hmm. And as Attorney General, then that would be something you would take
absolutely on. The other thing that I would want to see an increase in prosecutions on would be the filing a false police report. And those are rarely, if ever, prosecuted. And I do believe I know why, and that's a topic for another conversation. But malicious, somebody, let's say somebody's mad at you, an ex or somebody's just, oh boy, I'm going to get them. And then they make a phone call. Well, if the responding officer happens to believe their story over yours, guess what? You're going to find yourself charged with a crime. And that's wrong. These people calling up police authorities and wasting taxpayer dollars, they need to be prosecuted, because if you end up in the crosshairs of that, you're going to have to spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a criminal defense lawyer, and that's just not right.
We mentioned how financial problems can create some issues. Now, as Attorney General, you wouldn't directly be, involved in that. But what could you do to help financially strapped Oregonians?
Well, wrongful home foreclosures. I was actually the victim of that about 15 years ago, and that bank has been sued several times, and we had some problems with that. My wife and I did, and the bank actually issued a letter of apology. And so I went to go ahead and get it refinanced somewhere else at Washington Federal Bank, nice bank, by the way, and they approved me. The bank would not give them a payoff, so we lost our home, and that's wrong. and that's criminal. And it cost us about $50,000 in equity. Again, this was about 15 years ago, and it's very unfortunate. And the other thing that I want to see, having changes on are excess check overdraft fees. It's like, unfortunately, some people use those as kind of an impromptu line of credit, and if it gets out of hand, it can be $200-300 for the month in overdraft fees. And I think the banks need to cap that at $100 a month.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all make mistakes, and sometimes, I just think that's not right.
Well, some other things I know you wanted to bring up, particularly the idea of prison reform. That's a hotly debated subject. What are your thoughts on that as the Attorney General would to be?
Right. Well, number one would be prison overcrowding. And, so there is a law in the books that's not being used. And I know the reason why. And again, that's a topic for another time. But when the inmate is within, I believe it's 90 or 100 days, I'd have to look at the statute, but of being released, they can be released early, up to 90 days early, if they can demonstrate and prove that A, they have a job, and B, they have a place to live. And this is somebody that's going to be released anyway. So why not set them up with a firm foundation to becoming productive, law-abiding citizens back in our society again? And I believe a good foothold for that is, of course, a job and a place to live. I mean, that's a basic. We all need that, right? And so I think that if we incentivize them to do that, and I think that would be good. And it's sad that it's not being used, and I would want to see that being used.
Well, we're heading toward the end of the segment here. Any final thoughts before we go? Any other issues you'd like to address you'd be looking at as Attorney General?
Well, I do have some solutions for the homeless crisis, and many people may be familiar with. It's about 80 years ago, the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, federal program, and it's very similar to that. I mean, the trades are screaming for people. Electricians, plumbers, things like this. And if we give them the tools, and I know how we can do that, and we'd be basically setting up a small town. It's quite an ambitious platform. But we can do it. It's very doable, and I know how we can do it. And we're looking for partners in that. If you're in the building or trades or real estate industry, I'd want to talk to you, and let's make this happen. Because not only is it a public safety issue, it's a public health issue. And we're the wealthiest nation in the world, and there's no reason why all these people are homeless and having to live on the streets and use the sidewalk as a restroom. And, it's unconscionable. And with this program, it'd be about $7.5 million to start, and after that, it would be self-sustaining through the trades and things like that, and cost no money from the taxpayers, and it would completely solve the problem, 100%. We would have no homeless anywhere on any town in Oregon.
Well, it's again to remind folks they can get details on your ideas, your plans, and contact information at the website. Why don't you give that a final thought?
The website again is michaelcrossfororegon.com. And that's Michael Cross for Oregon, all spelled out, FOR, Oregon.com. And we ask everybody to go check that out. And if you got a little bit of time, or you can put in $10 or $20, we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Michael Cross, Republican candidate for Oregon Attorney General. Pleasure meeting you, and best of luck.
Thank you, sir.